Casey Gray here from The Conscious Builder, and today we are introducing a very exciting project that we have finally commenced after almost 2 years. Actually, it's been longer than that in the design process. This project is very interesting because it's not your typical renovation. We're actually getting into something that's called a chainsaw retrofit in the sustainable world, where we're not actually using chainsaws, but the idea is you chainsaw off the eaves of the roof and you kind of put a new jacket over top of everything, including the roof, as opposed to just the walls. The designer, Chris Straka, on the project had originally reached out to us back in like early 2018, I think, and said, hey, working on this project, would it be cheaper to tear it down or do these renovations? And we talked about it, and I gave him some rough numbers, and we worked through a few different options. And it kind of just, we have a lot of conversations like that about different projects, and it kind of just went away, and we continued on in our world. And then what happened is I ended up taking the Volt racing, the Chevrolet Volt that we had, and I wanted to have some fun. So I'm like, all right, let's go see how this thing races. And I just went to like a parking lot where they do like the autocross racing, so like around pylons and stuff. So it's like really short straightaways and a lot of turns and hard braking and stuff. And it was a ton of fun. But at that, obviously we stood out because we had the Chevrolet Volt with the Conscious Builder logos on the side of it. And there was a couple people that came up and was asking about it, obviously. And one of them happened to be the owner of this house. And we didn't know at the time, so we started to talk, and he said, oh, I'm actually working on this project, and he started to describe it, and I was like, wait a second, is that Chris Straka's project? And he goes, yeah. He goes, and I said, well, I actually was the one who gave the rough numbers to Chris. So that was kind of, I guess, the beginning of our relationship. Was we were there racing. He wasn't racing a Volt, but he was there racing his car, and that's how we ended up connecting. So, and here we are now, finally about to start this project. Now, the interesting part on this one is that the house is a full masonry house. There is no wood construction. It is, we thought 2 layers, I believe it's actually, we thought 3 layers, but it's actually 2 layers of brick on the main home. So we have to work all sorts of interesting connection details in order to attach the foam and attach the rain screen and attach and be able to support all of the siding that we're going to be putting on it. So it is wood siding. It's not heavy, but when you put that up an entire wall, there is some weight that we need to account for that's going to ultimately be attached to the masonry building by these fasteners. Darcy is already on site, and he has started with the underpinning for this project.
This is quite the extensive job here, but we're just getting it started now. To start off with, we're going to start underpinning this corner of the foundation. As you see, there's a few concern spots with the wet floor. We got cracks here, cracks over there, and this corner has settled and it shows on the outside. So we're just going to pick it up now with just a small amount of underpinning. Underpinning's pretty simple. It does take an engineer to go over with you though. So he came on site, he did a soil test, they also take a look at the situation, and they gave us a spec. The spec on this one is pretty much a big slab of concrete going underneath every footing. And you can see with the orange spray paint lines, he's got it set out where we need to break up and do each section. And then there's a procedure on how far apart we're allowed to do. So we can do this one today, and we can do that one in the corner. But then we have to wait, for now, 48 hours between doing the next two. So it's a pretty simple job. Just a lot of manual labor. If we could have, we would have loved to have excavated the outside as well and went from both directions. But for now, this project isn't going to excavate the outside. That might be next year. The big tell sign here is the foundation's dropped a little bit, and all the bricks on this corner have some pretty major cracking that really show on the outside that the foundation has settled over time. Because the cracks aren't always an indication of a falling foundation. You can get a crack in a foundation from just shrinkage, but this one does happen to be that the one corner is settled. So as it was dug out, they noticed that there is no footings done on this project. There's a few rocks that stick out a little past, but pretty much what we're doing now is digging underneath and adding a new footing, which is not the funnest job, as you can tell. Because unfortunately all of this will have to be hauled out of here eventually. But there's a lot more demo to go down here before we haul this out, which we can show over here. This is some more structural issues with the house that was found. There used to be a framed wall here before it came down, so it was a little hidden, but we had an idea. This is a brick-built house that is actually 2 courses of brick all the way to the roof line. And this opening was added to this addition to gain access, but no structure was added to carry through. So we're gonna have to re-support the brick, which is pretty much a giant piece of steel that's gonna run from about here over to there with a big new concrete column here. But the same thing, it's an engineer spec. So the engineer actually comes in and he gave us a prescribed solution to this specific problem. He was here yesterday. That's another thing I should mention about the underpinning actually. The engineer will be back probably 3 or 4 times throughout this project because he wants to see every stage from the initial excavation to before form and then even afterwards to make sure that everything's done right. It's not something that's like a building code issue. It's the engineer has to sign off on everything, saying that it's acceptable. So yeah, we're gonna start digging some holes.
My name's Chris Straka. I lead VERT, Plan Design Build. We are land use planning, architectural design, and development company here in Ottawa. We've been working with the Conscious Builder for quite a few years on a variety of projects, but primarily custom residential builds and designs. And we're currently working on at least 3 together. The home will preserve much of the front facade that exists now. There will be for I think really the first time in this home's history a front door that has some prominence from the sidewalk. Whereas previously the front door to the home was recessed. We will continue to recess the front door but project a roof canopy over it that comes modestly closer to the sidewalk than the existing original building's front facade, and so it will help to draw people up and into the home. The home now for the first time will also have a front deck, so that when the clients are wanting to get away from the sunshine, when they want to get views of the Rideau River and Beechwood beyond through the trees, they'll be able to do that from their own shaded front yard on a deck that's never existed before. The design, albeit a scaled back version from what we had once explored, the design still creates a space on the south side of the building that our clients can enjoy with family, with friends, or just themselves. A space that's covered outdoors and provides some shelter from the sun or from precipitation. The design will also strive through our approach to landscaping to address some overland water flow issues that have for years created a wet basement situation, but with some strategic regrading of the rear yard and the installation of some retaining walls and some new vegetation as well as semi-permeable surfaces, we will create a dry basement space where I don't think one has ever existed before.
So there's been a lot of back and forth and flip-flopping on the design, trying to figure out what's best, what works, what are the priorities, what are the wants, because wants are sometimes different than priorities. And what we ended up getting a permit for on this project is ultimately going to need to change. Because once we got to a point where we had enough details where we could put somewhat of an accurate price together, because there's still a lot of details that weren't sorted out yet, but once we got to that point, it went beyond what the homeowners were wanting to pay for the project. So we ended up scaling back, and instead we are still doing an addition on the side, but we're not doing an addition on the back as well. We're going to work with the existing addition that's there, at least keep the foundation. We have to fix the roof. We're not sure about the walls yet. It's also built with masonry, but we are going to revamp how this is going to look based on the original permit drawings that we had. There's been a lot of iterations since then. So right now, Chris is in the process of redesigning those elevations and working through some of these connection details with Darcy. If you want to stay up to date with this project and all the other exciting projects that we have on the go, please be sure to subscribe right here on this channel.